So for our next presentation, I'm going to ask Daniela if she will turn her camera on and say hello.
Hello, everyone. I will go ahead and
Well, well, thank you so much for being with us today. So as you pull your slides up, can you give us a self-introduction?
sure. So I'm Danielle Gratale. I am the AVP of Federal Affairs at Nemours Children's Health. We're a pediatric health system in the Delaware Valley and in Florida. And I work out of our national office, which focuses on really looking at how we can improve the health and well-being of children, not just in that we serve clinically or not even just in our service area, but really thinking about the whole nation. Are you seeing the right view or do I need to flip it here?
Now it looks perfect. So take it away.
Great. So thank you so much for having me here today. So I've been with Nemours for 14 years now, which has been a great journey. I've seen a lot of change though in the past 14 years, which is why I was drawn to this topic. I started at Nemours about a year or so into the creation of the national office. Where I work, it's National Office on Policy and Prevention. So when I first started, we really didn't have a policy and advocacy team. We started by focusing on one issue, and we've seen it blossom into a full-scale policy agenda. Throughout my course of time here, I've seen many different leadership changes. We've had our enterprise-wide CEOs retire. We've had retirements for our regional leadership. The vice president, executive vice president that I report to have changed. We've definitely seen a lot that has evolved over that time, but a common focus on our core mission of helping children and families. So it's been an exciting journey, and I'm happy to share a little bit about it today. So I think the first thing that really struck me just with the prior presentation was the cognitive reframing, because that's kind of where I'm coming from on change too. I think often when you're experiencing a change in the moment, it can feel overwhelming. Sometimes it can feel very negative. But there's a lot of positivity that can come out of change. So I think approaching it with a mindset that sees the opportunity in change, which these quotes really help reflect upon, is a great way to start and to kind of set yourself in the right mental place to help move things in a positive direction. So today I wanted to cover change at the macro level, so big picture, which is often tied to leadership change. Then spend a little bit of time on your team itself and how you can support a team and make sure you have a resilient team. And then thinking a little bit about a mindset of continuous improvement. So macro level change, I thought this was a good definition of it. Thinking big picture, so culture change, technology change, process change, even strategy change can be pretty high level. I would say this piece is what I have experienced a lot throughout my time at Nemours. Right now, we're in a place where we have a pretty new strategic plan, one that is really challenging us to make sure that on the clinical side of things, we're continuing to do highest quality of care. On kind of my side of the house, more the policy and advocacy side, a lot of more integration with our communications team and partners, thinking a lot about not just doing the policy and advocacy work and the practice and prevention work, but talking about it and having more thought leadership opportunities that really help to elevate it and to make it more on the minds of policymakers. And thinking through how we can do more high profile events and it's kind of similar activities to what we've done in the past, but amped up for sure. And the way that we work has also changed, of course, over the past few years. So going into COVID, most of the team, with the exception of me, was based in Washington, D.C. We had a couple of other folks in the Delaware Valley, but primarily it was come in every day. And post-COVID, we gave up half of our office space. And now we're all over the place. So we're in New York and New Jersey and Washington, D.C. and Delaware and Pennsylvania. Virginia, Alabama. So our national office really is Florida, actually, too, spread across the East Coast. And it was really an opportunity for all of us to think about how do we, in this new environment where we are more spread out, create more flexibility for everyone, maintain accountability, but also really focus on our relationships. Because when you're not in that office every day, seeing one another, really wanted to make sure that we're building in the time so that those more informal interactions that can really help a team to feel cohesion weren't suffering because we were more spread out. So that's just another change that we've been really thoughtful about over the past few years. So digging in a little bit more to some of the leadership changes that we've experienced, as we've gone through leadership change, I think it's been really helpful to make sure that the leadership of the team is doing everything that we can to expose our team members to the thinking of the new leader and to opportunities to directly interact. So some of that is to get a sense of style, some of that is to get a sense of vision and strategic plan. And it's also a great opportunity to highlight your team's values. So I think it's kind of a combination of a show and tell, but also a really good opportunity to listen, learn, and assess. I think that's probably been one of the biggest lessons for me about change is it's not just the outside factors are changing. It's really, you have such an important opportunity then to be really strategic and really thoughtful about what are you doing now that really aligns well and what could you be doing differently that hopefully can actually lead to better outcomes. So a few examples of how my team and I have evolved over the past 5 or 6 years as we've had a lot of different leadership changes. So as I said, we've had a big focus on national reputation and thought leadership and really making sure that we're not just doing good policy work on Capitol Hill and with our delegation, but that we're making sure that folks are aware of it and really elevating those priorities. So our CEO had and our executive vice president had shared that these were important priorities to focus more on the communications and dissemination strategy. So a couple summers ago, we did a big event that I was tasked with making happen. Wanted to do something on mental health. So I worked with our congressional delegation and we were able to get the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Javier Becerra, to come to Delaware and to do an event really focused on youth mental health. We've definitely seen over the past few years, especially, I mean, the youth mental health crisis was going on for a long time, but I think it's gotten a lot more attention the past few years. But we were able, as a result of that, to pull together national leaders, state leaders, families, community leaders, and really shine a spotlight on a problem that deserves more attention and deserves a lot more policy making in that area. And kind of around the same time, we worked really hard and we were able to secure some federal funds to really help us support a mental health workforce pipeline in the state of Delaware. So I think having that greater executive focus on telling our story and getting out there really helped create some positive outcomes. So the challenge that we were given resulted in, I think, us doing something, pulling off an event like that, and then helping to secure the federal funds was more than we had initially envisioned to do, but was very, very positive. Similarly, we had brought our new CEO to an advocacy day, and everything went well, wonderful meetings, and at the end of it, asked for feedback. I think this is so critical when you're going, especially as you're going through big picture changes, and got very candid feedback. Great day, great meetings, all went well. I want you to push harder, think bigger, and work on legislation that's more challenging. So that was another piece of feedback that I was really thoughtful about. So my team has since started working on a bill that has bipartisan support. Definitely getting it passed is still a challenge, but we took that challenge and really thought about how can we do more? How can we think bigger? And I think sometimes you need the impetus of of a leader or just of a strategic plan that really pushes you, and you might have very positive outcomes coming out of that. So at the same time, as things might be happening at the big picture level, at the strategic level, at the leadership level, there can also be changes happening just at the team level. You've probably seen this before, the stages of team, Tuckman stages of team development. I think they're really helpful though, just in thinking through as you're going through a change, whether it is a macro level change for your organization or the external environment, or your team itself is changing as folks come on and move off of a team. Just thinking through your role as a team member or your role as a leader and how you can help to get to that performing stage, because that's really where you want to spend most of your time. So just very quickly, the forming stage is when a team is coming together. There's lots of uncertainty, some level of excitement at the same time. But here, having a leader who's very clear with vision, responsibilities and roles, sets clear standards of conduct, how you will work with one another is really important. From team members' perspective, asking lots of clarifying questions can be very helpful. Storming is that phase where you might see some conflict. You're still trying to figure things out. There might be some role confusion. Folks might not be optimally performing or optimally getting along. And again, as a team leader, really focusing in on those standards of behavior and making sure that you're moving from the conflict stage to the norming stage, and being transparent and open is very helpful. When you're in that norming and performing stage, that's when you really want to see team members stepping up, taking responsibility, and you're hopefully firing on all cylinders. And it's a cycle. So of course, folks will leave, team members will change, and you will continue to go through these stages. But the most important thing here is making sure that you're thoughtful about the fact that you are going through these stages and that you are supporting the team throughout them. Kind of building on that, we have spent a good amount of time on my team, because over the past couple of years, so kind of post-COVID, we'd had a lot of managers who directly report to me, or a couple of our managers who had been here for a long time, found new opportunities that were great for them. So we were really thoughtful, the rest of us, about how do we celebrate those contributions and also recognize the opportunity. We have the opportunity to really think about who's doing what is the nature of the work that we're doing, and how can we rebuild in a way that is positive for everyone. So first it was thanking and celebrating, and then it was really taking that time to be thoughtful and think about what our next steps are. And as we've been rebuilding our team, we have used some of the tools from HR, like things like the DISC assessment that helps us think through our styles. And I think really being intentional about this piece is very important, because if you want to be able to weather the storm when things really can get challenging, thinking through how do I build the right team and how do we work with one another is really important. And once you have your team in place, what we do on my team is think about how we work together, both in terms of our relationships and then efficiencies in process as well. So to help with relationships, especially since we are so scattered geographically, we do, first, we spend a lot of time anytime someone is onboarded on really going through our standards of behavior and our core competencies. So those are enterprise-wide across the Nemours. We have a set of standards of behavior, things like make sure you're in the moment, make sure you're being humanistic, set clear expectations, help develop others professionally. So it's the way that we work together, not just the outcomes that we get. So we spend time going through those and through core competencies. And actually, when we're evaluated each year, half of our evaluation focuses on our work, and the other half focuses on those core competencies and standards of behavior. So it's a really great way of making sure that the way that you interact and work together really is seen as a value and an asset that you want to reward. We also, in terms of relationship building, think a lot about how to make sure that it's not just all work all the time. So we'll do icebreakers in our team meetings regularly. When we see each other in person, we'll try to do coffees or lunches that are more informal, just to make sure that we are continuing to get to know and to value each other as individuals, not just as colleagues. And that does help when getting to the next bullet about creating the space for tough conversations. So my team, we do rounding coming from like similar to like the medical rounding once a month, where we have in all my one-on-one meetings with direct reports, and they do it with their direct reports. It's meant to be open conversation of, let's talk about what's going on, what barriers are you facing, what's going well too, of course, but is there anything else I can do as a manager to help support you? But it's protected time. It's every month. Sometimes it takes 5 minutes, sometimes it takes longer, but having that forum to kind of go through questions and to raise issues that might not always be comfortable to talk about can be a really important way of surfacing issues, again, so that if you do get into those periods of organizational change where things do feel more turbulent, you have a way of making sure that your team members feel comfortable coming to you and discussing things. And then more on a regular basis, we do the last two things here. We, on a quarterly basis, talk about professional development goals to make sure that folks are on track, and that some of the stuff that they enjoy doing, whether it's going to conferences or writing academic papers, whatever it might be, that we're being strategic and thoughtful about upcoming opportunities to promote that. And then finally, I try to recognize my team whenever I can. We have an online platform across the enterprise where we can publicly praise one another. So we use that. We do it during team meetings. And of course, financial recognition, whenever it's possible, is always appreciated for your team members. So in addition to the relationship building side of things, also, I think it's important to think about, how are you being efficient and effective? And a while back, probably almost 10 years ago, we actually got some training on continuous improvement. And I mean, 10 years later, we don't do everything exactly as it was initially conceived, but some of the core pieces of it, like having a huddle board, templates, and checklists, I still use with my team because I think it's really helpful and important. So our huddle board is something that we use on a regular basis to go through to sort of surface any problems. And again, especially when you're thinking about organizational changes, having a place where you and a forum to talk about that can be helpful. So it's always kind of, what's the issue? What's the countermeasure? When is it due by, and who's responsible? We've also used a project board for when we're doing more complicated things, just to, again, assign accountabilities and what's the next step and who's doing what. And that kind of transparency, as well as just the focus on making sure that we're on top of things, again, helps keep us really organized, which is very important. And then we use templates and checklists whenever we can. So on the template side, there are types of things that are kind of repetitive, like comment letters, thank you letters, just the types of writing that we do pretty often, send to regulatory agencies or members of Congress. Having examples and templates can be really helpful in terms of taking some of the time away from having to recreate every time. When we do any of the big events or lobby days, we do lobby days fairly frequently. We create checklists and plans for all of those. Again, creates more efficiency. We always make time to debrief after any big event, and then really think about what do we want to do next time. And then that's kind of revisiting our templates and our checklists to help improve them. And then finally, each year we go through a strategic planning process. And that's when we're really being thoughtful about what is changing internally, what is changing externally. Given the nature of my work, we spend a lot of time thinking about Congress and the administration. And obviously, this year is an election year. And regardless of which side wins, it'll be a new administration with new heads of all the agencies. We'll have some new members of our federal delegation. So it's really a time for us to be thoughtful about given that there will be changes in priorities, given that we'll be dealing with a different set of actors, what do we need to do kind of proactively to plan for that and to make sure that we are in the best space possible? So right now we are analyzing the priorities of both parties to really make sure that we are best positioned to do our job. So I think taking the time to be thoughtful about all of these things, whether it's your priorities, your templates and checklists, your strategic plan, helps you so that if other unexpected curveballs come in and you do have big picture organizational shifts, your core, your foundation is very solid, and you're not kind of trying to figure out what do I do on an everyday basis at the same time that you're trying to kind of correct course. You know that your fundamentals are strong, and it's just a matter of kind of taking in new information and figuring out how to adjust at that point. So some final tips and takeaways here. I think my number one message is there's a lot of opportunity in change, and it really can be positive as long as you don't feel overwhelmed by it and you're willing to take the time to be thoughtful, ask questions, and really think about what am I doing now that could look different or could be better, and kind of take the positivity in that and move there. As long as you can do that, I think you really can weather changes in a way that is very positive. Certainly focus all the time on building those strong relationships and those open communications channels with your team, because if you don't have that in place, the strong team dynamic, it becomes so much more difficult to work together when there are big picture shifts either in the internal environment or in the external environment. Certainly work with your HR department and other colleagues to figure out ways like Myers-Briggs or DISC assessments, things like that, that help you figure out how to work best together with different communication styles. And I really think just embracing the spirit of continuous improvement can help you to stretch yourself and to do it in a way that can help you actually land better than where you were. So I'll end with this quote because, again, I think it's a positive way to frame everything. Don't be afraid to give up the good to go for the great. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. And do you have time for a few questions?
Sure.
Okay, well, thank you, Daniela. So this one came in. This one came in from Gracie early in your presentation, and Gracie asks, any tips on how to connect with new coworkers you have never met in person?
Sure. So I do that all the time. So we are, like I said, all over the place, and we have one hospital in Wilmington, Delaware, and another in Orlando, Florida. So usually I try to do something like this where we can actually see each other on video first. If it is someone that you expect that you will be working with on a regular basis, usually I'll set up some sort of a cadence. If it's not, it might just be, let's do a half-hour Teams meeting, and then check in as needed by email. Whenever we can, though, if I'm in Florida or in Delaware, I will try to meet people in person, because I think you absolutely can start to build a strong relationship virtually, but having those in-person connection points really does help. So start it virtually like this, try to be on camera if you can, and at the point at which you can, I think try to meet in person, because it does make a big difference.
That's great. Thank you. All right, we have two more questions before we move on to our panel. And India says, I manage a team with members close to retirement. Any tips on getting them on board with change and evolution?
So I think at different stages in one's career, you certainly look at things differently, but I think with folks who are close to retirement, there's probably still a lot of experience that they can draw upon. So almost instead of trying to convince them to get on board with the changes, sometimes a conversation of, all right, here's where we need to go. What do you think about the best way to get there? So it's not so much a manager imposing a change as we know we need to get here. How can we work together? What do you think throughout the course of your career? What have you seen to be effective? That's, I mean, with focus all across the board on my team, some are really new, some are more experienced. When we do have something new, I really try my best to work as a team to figure it out. I also am very transparent. So if we're working on something and it seems to not be going well, I have no problem saying, okay, let's try this again and let's brainstorm. So I really think kind of bringing in folks to the conversation and letting them have a role in how you implement the change can be a positive way of getting there together.
That's great. Thank you. All right, well, this is going to be our final question from Ria. And she says, you mentioned conferences and training. How can I pitch my boss on spending the money on this type of continuing education?
I mean, certainly every organization has its own budget constraints. Like I personally believe in it. I think it's really important myself. So usually my team, as long as I have something budgeted for it, which I usually do each year, it's a matter of picking out which conferences are most strategic with my team members as opposed to pitching them on the concept. I guess in terms of pitching someone on the concept who maybe isn't sold on it, if there is any level of budget flexibility, I think it's really thinking about what is the gap that you're trying to fill through a particular opportunity. So one of my team members literally just came back from a conference this past week and came back and is sharing presentations and notes with the entire team. So if there's a way to talk about this specific conference will help me in this way, and I'll bring back value to the team by sharing key lessons. And you go to one and it works out well, and you make some new connections and can use that as a basis for future conversations with your boss, the combination of networking, new skills learned, and bringing back some of those learning to your team. I think there might be a positive way to build a case for it. It's just a matter of what priorities are and what you can fit in the budget.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Well, so before we move to our panel, do you have any final thoughts or words of wisdom for all of our viewers today?
Sure. Sorry about that. So I think just in reflecting on change overall, sometimes things don't always go well at first when a new change is happening. And that's okay. I don't think it should be viewed as a sprint. I think any type of change really is meant to be a long-term opportunity. So keep listening, keep trying. And if at first you don't feel like you made the great impression that you wanted to on a new leader, or if something didn't go as planned, don't lose heart. Just keep at it, because I think there's lots of opportunity over time to continue to see the opportunity and change and to continue to make it positive.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Daniela.